2024, I discovered Notion, and one of the first pages I made was a book tracking template that I could use to track all of my reading that I was doing in the second half of 2024. As I'd only just started using Notion, this was a very simple page that didn't have really too much integration or fancy formulas and things going on. And so at the start of 2025, when I made my new yearly pages, I made an updated version of my book tracker. And today I'm here to go through how it works and share it with you if you would like to get it for yourself. If you haven't seen my previous video on my old book tracker, I will link it up in the card up in the top right. I still have that one for sale on my Etsy as well as this one in case you want more of a simplified version versus more of a not complicated version, but just has more intricate features in it that the other version doesn't have. Both of them you can purchase on my Etsy store, which I will put the link for in the description. I don't think there's anything more we need to add before we start going through this template, so let's head over and have a look at it now. If you purchase this template off my Etsy store, this is how you will see it when you get it, and it just has a bit of yellow information throughout the page saying how each feature works, but today we're going to look at a clean version so we don't have all that in the way. And this is how it looks all cleaned up. We'll go through the different features one by one and explain how each of them work and how each of the databases are related and talk to each other. Show you some examples of how it works both on this page and on my own version where I already have 74 books in there. So we'll start from the top. The first section is reading trackers, and this is just various ways to keep track of your reading that I wanted to have for myself. The first one up the top is your goals for the books read and pages read per year. This is a pretty simple thing. You only need to touch it when you first set it up, and what you do is you add in your goal number, say 50 books and 10,000 pages, and from then on, whenever you finish reading a book, you can add the pages to that book and it'll count up to these goals, which I'll show you when we actually add in the books. Next to it, I have the currently reading and the TBR. These two views, as well as the complete reading list view, are all the same database. They are just filtered to show different properties. I think it's a select property, whether it's a TBR, currently reading, or finished book. When you are reading a book, it'll show up as a gallery view. You can add your book cover to make it look pretty and have something to do, and it'll also show the start date. And then the TBR is just a basic list. What I've done in my own is make separate views for the current month you're in, so you can see your total TBR as well as the ones that you're planning to read this month. Below that, we have some more reading trackers that I thought were just a bit of fun. The first one is the genre reading tracker. So whenever you add a book, you can select a genre and then it will count up in this formula how many books of each genre you've read. You can open each page and it'll also show a gallery view of every book that you've read that is that genre. Next to that, we also have moods. Because I use both Goodreads and Storygraph, on Storygraph it gives you moods of each book, and so I've added that into this page so I can choose the moods for each book that I read and see how many I've read of each mood. Once again, if you open a page, it'll have a gallery view of all the books that you've read, and it also has the formula that shows up on this home page that says how many books that you've read. It will change color depending on how many you've read and style. When you've read no books, it'll say no books read yet in blue. When it is one or more, up to 20, it'll change to pink and have a little star emoji. I've also made it so that when the number is 1, it has the correct syntax of saying book read rather than books read. And then finally, if you read more than 20 of a mood or a genre, it'll turn purple and have a little heart next to it. This is the same in both the genre and the mood trackers. So just like the books read and goals read, there's not anything you have to do in these databases themselves. It's all reading from the books read database and getting the information from there. Next, if we scroll down, we have the monthly reads. This looks a bit funny when it's just new and you haven't done anything with it yet. Down here, I have a it's not that long, but I do have a formula that shows how many are on your TBR when you're in the current month, how many books you've read, how many pages you read, and your average rating for that month. And then when a month is complete, it'll change to month complete rather than TBR read 0. When you open a page, it'll then show a few different sections for each month. It will show your TBR, if you have any linked as this month that are unread, any books read, it'll show all the ones you've completed. And then I also wanted to have a place to see my 2-sentence review section, which we'll talk about when we go into the actual book database and talk about all those properties. This is just, I wanted to display all my reviews in an easy to see way that I don't have to then open the book and see the review and then go back out and things like that. You can change the covers for all of these galleries to look however you want. I've done that on mine and it's very personalizable. I do have the emojis set to Southern Hemisphere seasons, but they're also very easy to change. You can just click on them from this page and change to whatever you want. Finally, on this home page, before we go through how it all works, we have the 2025 complete reading list. I have this both in a list view and a gallery view. This will show every single book that you've marked as done in this database, whether you add it from here or you've added it in your TBR or you're currently reading and then changed the property of adders to done. When you add a book, it'll also in the gallery view show the author and the star rating. And I'll go through all of that stuff as we go into a book. And then if you want to see, this is just sort of a visual way of seeing them because it'll show the book covers that you add. If you just want to see a list view to see the information, you can use the list view and it'll show all the information that you need. So now that we've gone through all the different features of the page, I will put in a book and show you how everything works in there. So we will start by adding it to our TBR. There's a few different ways you can do this, and for each view of this database, so TBR, currently reading, and the completed book list down the bottom, they all have slightly different templates that will automatically be set if you add a book to that area. If you're dragging a book through the system, so you've added it to your TBR, but then you start reading it and then you finish it, there are properties you will need to change that you wouldn't have to change if you just added it to read when you've finished reading it. So I will explain them as well. So you can either click this blue new button or you can click new page either here when it's empty or when you have a list already going, it will show underneath. So let's add a book and you'll see it opens like this, and then you can open it up and put in information, or often what I do is I'm just adding it here because mostly the only thing I want to know at the time when it's in the TBR is the name of the book, just to remind me it exists. And then I also have the month view on this particular view so that I can choose what month I'm going to put it to. This works best for me when I am starting a new month and I'm choosing what books I'm going to read that month. You can at any time click on this edit button and the month will show up, and so I can come to my full TBR list, decide what books I am planning on reading that month and add the month, and then in my view that is specific to that month, they will show up without me having to sort of open each page and select the month. So that's just why I've set it up this way. So we'll have this book as Twilight, and let's say we want to read it this month, so we choose August, and that's all I do. And then when I started reading the book, I will open it up. I do like to show all these properties as none of them really need to be hidden, but they're just hidden for nice looking, but I do use all of them actively. So when I start reading the book, I will add it to currently reading, and you'll see now it is popped up rather than in the TBR. That TBR is now empty and it's popped up in currently reading. What you then can do is you could add in whatever information you want. The only information you should add, or I like to add, is what day I've started it. So let's say we started it on Monday. You'll see now that this start date formula has come in with just sort of a nicely formatted start date, which will then also show up here. The other thing that I like to do when I'm currently reading something is get the book cover and add it in. There's a few different ways you can do it. You can either save the image and upload it, or you can just copy the image address, which I find the easiest, as I'm often getting them from places like Goodreads or Amazon or their publishers' websites where the image address is always going to stay the same, so you won't lose it that way. So I just copy the image address, go into the cover, go to link, paste it in and submit. And after a few seconds, it will load in. I don't really bother repositioning it in this view because it's just a tall book cover in a long cover. It never fits well, and so I just leave it however it decides to go. And then I close it up and you'll see it's here. As in this copy, I haven't made this sizes different, so I've just fixed the sizing here so that it's a bit smaller and fits a bit better. And when you add a second book, if you're reading 2 or more books at once, it'll be next to each other, not in a big long thing. That's all I've done here. Once you've finished the book, that's when I then put in all the information. So I open up the book, put in the information I need. So the author, no, M-E-Y, Maya. You put in how many pages it is, which I don't remember, so I'm just going to say 500. I think it's more than that. The genre is fantasy, romance probably. The moods, if we look up the moods, story, graph, light. So you'll see here what I mean about the moods. So in Storygraph, it says it's adventurous, emotional, and mysterious. And so if we go back, we can add them in. So adventurous, emotional, and mysterious. And then the date finish, which we say was today. And then the important thing you have to do for these goal trackers, this is only if you add a book not from the books read area. If you add it from the books read area, it will use the template that already adds these pages. But what you need to do is click on here and add it to books read and pages read. These are relations that are linking to these databases here. So you can see now that we've added it, it says we've read one book and we have read 500 pages. And you'll see that it says we've completed 2% and 5% of the goal. So if we put the goal down to 10 books, you'll be able to see what it does a bit more. But basically, as you increase towards your goal of 100%, there it will switch to filled in hearts. I just did this so I could have a more visual way of seeing things, and it just made it sort of a bit more fun of a page, but it's not a necessary thing to have. It's just a fun thing. So back to our other properties. We then have the format, which you could put in during the TBR or currently reading stage, or you could wait until now. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't relate to anything. It's more just for reference if you go back to a book, like you forgot how you read it or anything like that. So this is a physical book. And the important thing is you need to change the status. So we finished it. So we changed from currently reading to read. And you'll see that it's disappeared from currently reading. Stars and start date are two formulas that you don't need to touch because they will just calculate themselves. And start date we talked about earlier for the currently reading view. Rating is just because I wanted to calculate average ratings. I needed this rating rather than previously in my last year's version was a drop down that had sort of color coded select properties. This had to be just a basic number property. And so because of that, I made a stars formula that makes it sort of look pretty again. So this formula will just format the number you put in and change it to a color and add emojis. So if we put in 1 star, you'll see it is gray with emoji of a star. If we put in 2, it turns into brown, 3 into blue, 4 into pink, and 5 into orange. And so to add the rating up here, it'll automatically do that. You can put any, so I use quarter stars for my ratings. So you can put in quarter stars and it'll still be formatted the right way. It doesn't have to be whole numbers. It doesn't even have to be quarters. It can be literally whatever you want, like as a number. And as long as it's between 0 and 5, it will change format. If for some reason you go over 5, all it will do, it will stay orange. So if you put in 5, it'll be orange. If you put in 10, it'll be orange. Whereas if you put in 4, it's pink, 5, it's orange. So that's all that is. So let's say we gave this 5 stars. The other thing is I have a 2-sentence review section that I talked about earlier in the monthly view. And this is just where you can put in the review of the book. You don't have to use this. You can do more than 2 sentences. Sometimes I do more than 2 sentences. It was just a way to be able to put in my thoughts so that I could come back to them. Even before I was making reading journal videos where I talk about my thoughts of the book, I wanted to, in case I wanted to look back on a book in the future and forgot a bit what it was about, I could go back and read and see what my thoughts on it were. That's right, Bella. Look, it's a worm. And that's it for all the properties. There are quite a few properties, but it's not too many. And once you get used to them, they're all very quick to fill out. Whenever I finish a book, I'm usually here for about 2 minutes filling this out. The thing that takes me the longest is I use the Call Pal rating system. So I go and rate it that way and calculate that rating. And so that takes a bit longer than if you're just doing it based on vibes and put in a number. And once that's done, we'll go look for it. So because we changed it to done, it's gone from currently reading. And if we go down to the bottom, you'll see it here in our reading list, both as a book cover, or if we go to the list, it's here as well. And so if you ever need to find it and change it, that's where it's gone. And as you read more books throughout the year, they'll fill up and it goes from earliest read to latest read in terms of sorting. We can also look at the other places that we'll see it. So because it's a romance and a fantasy, you see now they both say 1 book read. If we open up one of them, you'll see it also shows as a gallery view. Same for the moods. It's adventurous, emotional, and mysterious. And again, we open it up and we just see it here. And then if we go into the month, so you'll see now that because we've put in some details, it says how many books we've read, how many pages we've read, and our average rating. The top is blank. I haven't fixed the formula on this page, but it is fixed on the actual template. It'll just say TBR read 0. If I quickly get the correct formula, there we go. So I have set it that whenever the TBR is 0 in the month you're in, it'll say TBR complete. If you add a book, so if we add another book, say we want to read New Moon in September, it will say on TBR 1. If you added that to August instead, decided you wanted to read it this month, take it away from September and add it to August, you'll see that there's nothing in September. It won't say TBR complete because it's not the month you're currently in. And August will say on TBR 1 rather than TBR complete. This was just, I found the easiest way for me to write this formula because obviously the formula is not going to be able to tell when you don't have anything on TBR. It's easier just to say it's complete because that's usually how it is for me. And so it has that as well as the books read, the pages read, and the average rating. And each time you add a new book, it will calculate these itself. You don't need to change anything. And then you open up the month. We have the TBR, seeing that we have New Moon. We have the gallery view of the books, which you can use to open and look at all the details. And then under here, we have the 2-sentence reviews, like I said, just so I can easily see them all at once. So if we go to my 2025 reading page and have a look at how it looks once you have multiple books in. So you can see at the moment I'm up to 75 books this year. And so my progress bar is at 63% and showing a lot of hearts. And then same with my pages read, I'm up to 61% at 36,500. I just started a book today actually, so we can add that in. So I am reading Lorenzo. So this is just showing what I do for any book. So I add in the cover, I add in the month if it hasn't come from my TBR, which this one hadn't, and I add in the format. It's just the habit I have of the things that I add in each stage. Usually if I've added it from the TBR, I will have added the format in. If I add it from the currently reading, I'll usually add it in at this point. And that's all I add in for now. You could add in the author, the number of pages, the genre, and the moods if you wanted. However, I just don't. I think the genre and the moods will automatically count, even though it's still currently reading, but the pages will not count towards the goal until you link it to this relation. As you can see down here, I have my call pile system in the body of the page so that I just have an easy place for me to put in all those ratings and figure them out and then remember them in the future when I add them to my reading journal. And so now you can see I have the one book I'm currently reading, and we have the monthly TBR that I talked about. So I have the 2 books that I haven't yet read on my TBR for this month, as well as I have my big list of not all of the books that I have on my TBR. It doesn't include quite a few physical TBR, but also Kindle Unlimited TBR. So eventually I should add it all here so I remember what they all are, but I don't have them. And this is why I also like having the monthly TBR, because this page can get very long, which just sort of, as you can see, makes this area look not as clean. So then having the shorter view of just the month helps to sort of clean it up a bit and just see the things you want to see, but easily be able to get to those areas. You can also see what I meant before about changing the covers. So I've put sort of thematic images that I got from Pinterest for each genre and each mood. And you can see that I'm up to, my fantasy romance is going strong, 69 romance books out of 75 books this year. So if we open that, you can see it is all of the books that I have read this year that are marked as romance will show in this gallery. And then there's so many, it's not even loading them all. So that's them. In the template, there's a little gap here. And that's because I have put an image, again, I think it was from Pinterest here, just for some visual fun. And so you can do that yourself if you want, or you can just get rid of that column. So you can just delete it. I think if you go like, you can just go like that, and then you can have the months across the whole page if you want. The same with these ones, they're just in 2 separate columns. If you didn't want to do the moods, you could just delete the entire database and they'd be gone, or you can just leave them there, or you can hide them. Really up to you what you want to do with the page once you get it. So I also changed the month images. These are just, again, things I've got off Pinterest, but when you sell things on Etsy, you shouldn't use not your images. And so that's why I have just made these sort of basic header cards as template holders, which if you like them, feel free to keep using them. I don't mind, but I also won't be offended if you choose to use other things. And so if you have a look, mine is looking very full compared to the template. You can see for each month all my stats, as well as August, which I'm currently in the middle of. And if we open maybe the one I've read the most in March, you can see those stats all show up here. My TBR is empty. It'll show, this is a table I had so I could see the information when I was adding it to my reading journal, but it has all the gallery view, as well as all the 2-sentence reviews in an easy place for me to see. And then finally, we go down to the complete reading list, and you'll see that it is very long, but you can just easily at a glance see every book that I've read, its author and its rating. And so this is how the book tracker page looks once you start using it and make it your own. How I've been using it this past 6 months, 8 months. Oh God, it's August. Yes, this past 8 months. I think it's pretty perfect for everything I need. At this point in the year, do not expect that I'm going to change much of it for next year in 2026, but I'll think about it a bit more when I start actually planning what I'm going to do for 2026 in terms of using Notion, and think about if there's features that I want to change or new things that I want to add then. So that is my comprehensive reading tracker Notion template. I hope you enjoyed this explanation of the video, and maybe it gave you some ideas to make your own Notion template, be it a book tracker or really anything else. Like I said earlier, if you would like to purchase this or my more simple book tracking template or any of my other Notion templates, I've left a link to my Etsy shop in the description below. You can find them all there, and if you would like to know anything more about the templates before you buy, you can contact me either in the comments here or on Etsy itself, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. If you'd like to watch another video about a Notion template I've made, I will link this one over here, which is my trip planning template. I made this when I was planning to go to Korea again in April as a way to keep track of all of my planning I needed to do, including all the flights, accommodation, and general bookings of attractions. So if you'd like to watch that, just head on over there, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye.